In this update, we've got Major Hurricane Lee looking very impressive out here into the Atlantic. And just to its right, we do have Margot that's also expected to become a hurricane. But luckily for that one, that is expected to stay out in the open waters of the Atlantic. But further south, a little bit more concerning, this newly developed system that's also looking to take on storm characteristics, and that actually may try to take a similar path than what Lee is taking. But we do have a lot of sudden change with a major cool down on the way, and you're going to be feeling it, and this is a welcome relief in sight. As the jet stream starts to lower, it's going to start feeling more like October-like than it is September. So well below average temperature anomalies are definitely on the way, and actually some much needed rain as well. So if you are new to the channel and like detailed weather breakdowns, hit the subscribe button and you're in. You get all my daily content on this channel. And also, I would love to reach 200,000 followers by the end of the year, and you can help me get there by subscribing to the channel and following all my daily content. So let's take a look at the big picture on the jet stream. Of course, there is powerful Lee. Major hurricane actually looks to intensify back up to a category 4 hurricane. But look at that, folks. That is the southern jet stream getting more active. The polar jet actually becomes less active. So for you guys up there in the Pacific Northwest, you're kind of high and dry. There's not much happening instead of above average conditions for you guys. But further south, it's starting to get activated with that southern jet stream pulling further south. And we're going to actually have multiple disturbances. They're going to be coming across the Four Corners regions back into the Mexico region. That filters into the Texas Panhandle, gets into the Oklahoma, and actually eventually filters into portions of North Texas. At the same time, there's that significant start of the transformation of the cool down that's going to be taking place. We're going to have a pretty significant low pressure that's going to be developing along the Great Lakes. That is going to slide southbound and meet up with this southern jet stream, and that, with pulses of energy in the atmosphere, is going to wring out precipitation and bring definitely some welcome rains, but unfortunately some of those could be on the severe side. So later on this afternoon, these could actually be some big time hail producers out here into the New Mexico region and portions of Amarillo, getting into far west Texas like Midland, Odessa, getting into the Lubbock region, getting into the San Angelo region. These could be some significant hail producers, some 2-inch plus type variety, maybe up some tennis ball size hail, and some significant winds. We're talking the approach of 60, 70, maybe even some isolated reports of 80 mile per hour wind gusts with some downburst winds associated with these significant severe storms. Here's the water vapor imagery, because we're going to have another pulse of energy actually probably going to be entering portions of North Texas right around the midnight time frame, along with the cold front. So that's when the cold front is actually going to be diving south through Oklahoma by then, and likely entering portions of North Texas. And wow, look at the eye on Lee, folks. That is going to be a dangerous system, and likely going to be going back up to a category 4 hurricane by tomorrow, even possibly going into Wednesday. So, but Wednesday, look, I mean, further north, right? We've got the less active polar jet, so not much precipitation to work with. We're looking at the water vapor transport index, but we've got a more active southern jet stream. That is totally different than what we've seen for the last 3 months. So we're starting to be seeing the kind of the appearance of an El Nino, right? And so we're going to have pulses of energy. These are subtle impulses in the atmosphere. And with that lift, you got to have lift associated with it. And we've got the cooler air continue to drag southbound. That's going to cause some heavier rains to transport itself back over these same regions into New Mexico, into the Texas Panhandle, back into North Texas here. But we're still going to be dealing with some very heavy rains. They had some heavier rains yesterday into the Northeast, and they're going to be expecting even more, heavier rains back into portions on Tuesday, going into your Wednesday timeframe. This is not from Lee, folks. This is from a significant trough that's going to be impacting this region. And there's the cooler air, right? I mean, that's the 5, 10, 15 degrees below average temperatures. And yeah, it's going to feel a little bit more October like. So definitely a welcome sight. And likely, literally over 100 million Americans are going to be below average, and that's at least a third of the country, and that's something that we have not seen really all summer long. So this is a significant change, and it's, you know, something you typically see in September, but hey, it's a nice change that's going to be on the table, and that's going to be the beginning stages of a little bit more active subtropical jet. So here's the jet stream, right? Here's the 500 high 500 wind speed. You've got this counterclockwise swirl, and then of course to the right of that, you got to have some upward rising motion air, and with that out ahead of it, that's where the line of thunderstorms are going to be. So that's where we have some heavier rains are going to be associated with this system, you know, going into your Wednesday time frame. As of course, all eyes will be on Lee as it continues to make its trek further northbound. But there's those impulses of disturbances that are still inundating parts of the south, right? So these are going to be not just washouts every single day, but you're going to have, you know, areas 40, 60, 80% precipitation almost on a daily basis across these regions. And that's something you likely would welcome for those regions, being in exceptional and, you know, extreme drought. It comes a little bit at a time, not just all at once, where it just kind of runs off and it really doesn't soak in. So this is actually the rain you're looking for, trust me. And some of it can be heavy, right? I mean, some of it can be on the heavier side. So yeah, not out of the question as the atmosphere continues to kind of moisten up. It's been so dry in all layers. As it does, it's going to be able to produce heavier rains. And that's exactly what's probably going to be starting to unfold on Wednesday, especially into the Texas Panhandle, and that gets into far west Texas as that out ahead of it, right? You got the Northeast who's still getting some of that heavier rain, complements of that low pressure center that'll be traversing across. But going into Thursday, we still have another system, right? So we stay high and dry out west in the Pacific Northwest. You're still, you know, under pretty much above average temperatures. Not much upward rising motion air. You got sinking air, so it's pretty calm up there into the Northwest, and just to kind of enjoy the nicer weather. But further south, you do have that instability, and there's another piece of energy that comes across now North Texas, getting into Central Texas. While we watching the timing of this trough and the speed of Lee, because that makes a huge impact. But look at that, 3.5 inch per hour rainfall rates. So you know Lee is definitely going to be packing a punch. But out ahead of it, man, this is going to be for some really nice air, right? So with that cold front, it continued to sink in further south. There's continued expected highs going into Friday. So you got the cool down coming likely later on tonight, but that just continues for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and even into Friday. You've got widespread 70s, even widespread 70s in Oklahoma and Arkansas, much of New Mexico, getting into Nevada here. You know, much cooler air, obviously much colder into the mountain regions, but most of the country is experiencing some pretty pleasant light conditions. There's not much to speak of as far as like really intense heat. You have to go all the way down to San Antonio, it's like 97, but that's typically nothing what you've seen as of late. But the ridge of high pressure will be continued to sinking further south back into Mexico. And, you know, the deeper we get, because the following week we'll head into officially fall. So things are changing, the seasons are changing, and we've got some heavier rain. So there's the sinking air out west, right? Not much happening, high and dry, but all the energy is across the Four Corners regions. But it really gets activated into the Texas Panhandle, back into Oklahoma, really into West Texas. It's kind of hard to imagine these areas are expected to get 3, 4, 5, 6 inches of rainfall after they've had almost next to nothing all summer long. So this is definitely a welcome sight. And up here across the Great Lakes and into the Northeast, that is that low pressure center. That's the trough that we're talking about. That's going to bring all the instability for your work week. And this takes you through Saturday morning. So that's where it continues to get a little bit tricky on where the ultimate path of where Lee is going to go, because we've got the trough and we've got a dominant ridge just to its right. So here's the latest update from the National Hurricane Center. it keeps it a major hurricane. In fact, it looked likely balloons up back to a category 4 hurricane, but it continues to remain a hurricane, right? I mean, even further north, just off the coast of Nantucket, it continues to remain even, as a hurricane by Saturday mornings with these very warm waters, up here. So what we'll be tracking is, of course, the speed, right? You saw the little bit of a more upward speed as it traverses northbound, and then we've got the trough moving out, and then we've got a ridge building in. So we're starting to see a little bit of a nudge in that last update from the National Hurricane Center that it trends it back to the west, right? So that's the concern, is the trough moves out and the ridge builds in, and it actually backdoors and pushes it further off into the west, and the northeast has more impacts from what will be Lee. So it's a dangerous system. So right now, I mean, it's basically from Long Island to Nova Scotia. It's got to be really on high alert from this system. And, the model runs trend back and forth a little bit on every run, but more or less, they've been in that same kind of ballpark from Long Island to Nova Scotia with impacts. And, depending on the speed of Lee and depending on the speed of the trough that moves out and then the ridge bigs back in, if the trough moves out and the ridge is stronger, that's going to push it further west, right? And you have a lot more impacts because however you slice it, it's going to be a hurricane, right? It's going to be a hurricane. It's still a hurricane, and all model data well up into Maine. So, and even into Nova Scotia. So, regardless, it's going to be still a hurricane. So we've got to be watching this track. So any sudden movement west obviously would take a drastic turn for the worst, across inland regions across this region. But here's the latest update as far as like the earliest timing from tropical storm force winds, right? So this will continue to kind of make the turn and then head northbound and likely lift a little bit. See that nudge at the end? It's subtle, but there is a little bit of a nudge because it feels the effects of that ridge. And then there's where you could see the beginning stages of these tropical force, storm force winds as early as Friday afternoon, getting into Friday evening. But the weekend is what we're really more concerned about. And this is actually just not in the picture yet, but definitely Saturday and Sunday. But look at all the models, right? And there's not every member takes it out into Nova Scotia or out to sea. There's definitely some members showing that westward movement, right? And has the effect of that ridge. So not all guidance is saying this is heading out to sea, folks. There continues to show, guidance and said, hey, the ridge could be strong enough and it could fishtail back into the northeast. So that's why we have to be on the lookout really from Long Island region all the way up into Nova Scotia. That's kind of where the area that we have to be concerned starting on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So we'll be continue to update where the track is and track the subtle wobbles with this system, because it's going to be a formidable storm. Regardless, it's still going to be a hurricane. And what's concerning, what might be coming after Lee, right? Because this is hurricane season. This is peak season, right? So we've got Lee, we've got Margot, and then this is the next one, right? And this is the next one. And then there's actually some guidance kind of takes it a similar path. If we look at some of the longer range GFS ensembles, and these are kind of all the ensembles, and it's got a group, right? Kind of the same areas that Lee's expected to go. It's got a group of ensembles right along anywhere from North Carolina to Maine. So, and that's of course back until the 23rd. So we got a long time to track these systems. But again, the model guidance and some of the ensemble guidance is kind of showing that system down there in orange now is kind of taking kind of a similar path, right? So we've got to be concerned. If you take a look at the latest kind of the GFS run, I mean, this is exactly where Lee was, right? I mean, this is exactly where Lee was, 949 millibar, low pressure major hurricane, right? And so, and if we continue the path, and of course, this is just one run, I showed you the ensembles, but yeah, it kind of takes a similar path, and we're going to have to be looking at some of these same areas, maybe again in a 10 to 12 day time frame. So we'll be watching, after Lee moves out, we'll have to watch what comes after, because this is this other storm looks to take kind of a, unfortunately, kind of a similar path. But there's the much needed heavier rains is going to be impacting the U.S. this week, with kind of the bullseye across the southern plains with those subtle impulses of energy. And of course, you've got the benefits of the trough coming up from the northeast, and this is just through into the northeast with those heavier rains that are going to be at the combination of the trough and where the ultimate track will lead will likely be ending up. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update where I protect you for and after the storm.